Okay, so we've found the ratios. So let me just review real quick. So let's say it's the tangent of 225 degrees equals. When we find this answer, that's the ratio. So let's find it real quick. 225 degrees is in the third quadrant, out from the origin to the x-axis. This angle is 225 degrees, so this is 180. I go 225 minus 180, and my reference angle here is a 45. So I label my triangle 1, 1, root 2. Tangent of 45 is what I'm using as my reference angle, is opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite over adjacent. And all students take, we're in the positive quadrant, so it's a positive 1. So that answer is 1. We're finding the ratio. Now we're going to switch it up and we're going to find the angles. And notice what I said, find the angles, more than 1. So I'm going to say sine of theta equals negative 1/2. Okay, so I look, this is the ratio. So the ratio is negative. So I think to myself, where is the sign negative? All students take calculus. If I'm thinking about where it's negative, I'm just going to think, where is it positive? It's positive in the first and the second. All students, S is sign. I don't want it to be positive, so I'm not in the first and second. I'm going to be in the third and the fourth. So I draw my triangle out from the origin to the x-axis. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So I label my triangle 1 over 2. You should recognize that and say, oh yeah, this is going to be root 3. Opposite the 1 is 30. So that tells me my reference angle is 30 degrees. Is 30 degrees an answer? No. Sometimes it will be, sometimes it won't be. In this case, 30 degrees would be in the first quadrant. We don't want to be in the first quadrant, so 30 degrees is not an answer. So now I have to figure out, what is my answer with a 30-degree reference angle? Well, if I go all the way here, I'm going to 180 plus another 30, so that's 210 degrees. Remember, never use 90, never use 270 when you're finding these angles. Never use 90, never use 270. You're either going to use 360 or you're going to add or subtract from 180. Okay, now in the fourth quadrant, if I just redraw another picture real quick, here's my 30. I'm going to go all the way to here. I'm not quite all the way to 360, I'm less. So I'm 360 minus 30. Do not use 270. So my two answers are 210 and 330. Reference angle was 30, but I have to be in the third and fourth quadrant. So I go back and I do a quick double check. Is 210 between 180 and 270? Yes. Is 330 in the fourth quadrant? Yes. Okay, so let's look at another one. I'm going to say cosine of theta equals root 2 over 2. Okay, so again, we're thinking, this is my ratio. I'm finding the angles. My angles are all going to be between 0 and 360. Notice how I write that. It's going to include the 0, not include the 360. Okay, so I have to draw my triangles, but I have to figure out what quadrant I'm in. So all students take calculus. This ratio is positive. Cosine is positive in the first and the fourth, so that's where I'm going to be. My answers have to be in the first and the fourth. So I draw my triangle in the first quadrant, out from the origin to the x-axis. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So root 2 over 2. I look at this and I say, wait a minute, this isn't my triangle. This isn't the way it normally is. So we have to make a little adjustment here. Remember, this fraction has been rationalized. So I call it derationalizing. What was this before it was rationalized? When we rationalize it, we multiply by the square root of 2. So I'm just going to divide by the square root of 2. This divided by the square root of 2 is 1. And then you know this had to be the square root of 2 because it's a 2. Which if I rationalize this right here, I get that. So I'm good to go. So my adjacent side is 1. My hypotenuse is root 2, and that looks more like what I'm used to. So that tells me the reference angle is 45. So reference angle is 45. Is 45 an answer? In this case, yes it is, because that's my first quadrant answer. So my answer, first quadrant answer is 45. Now I have to get my fourth quadrant answer. So if I draw my angle triangle here, I have to get that angle. I'm not going to quite go all the way to 360. I'm going to be 45 less. So 360 minus 45. My second answer is 315 degrees. Again, I check, one last check. This is my first quadrant answer. This is my fourth quadrant answer. All students take calculus. That's where I want to be. That's where it's positive. So again, you might have to de-rationalize when you see a radical. So be careful with that. Okay, number 3. Let's try secant of theta equals 2. Let's make it negative 2. All right, so secant goes with cosine. All students take calculus. Cosine is positive in 1 and 4. We don't want positive, we want negative. So we're going to be in the second and third quadrant. I'm going to draw my triangle out from the origin to the x-axis. So remember secant, you can think of this as being cosine of the reciprocal. So you can either think about this as adjacent over hypotenuse or think about this as hypotenuse over adjacent. So I label my triangle accordingly. 1, 2. So you say, oh, this is my root 3. Opposite the root 3 is 60. So my reference angle is 60. Is that an answer? No, because that would be in the first quadrant. So I need to get that angle right there. So I'm not going all the way to 120 or 180. I'm going to be 60 less, so it's 180 minus 60. So one answer is 120. And then my other answer, I'm going to be in the third quadrant. Reference angle is 60, so I'm going to go through 180 plus another 60. So in the third quadrant, I'm adding. So remember, you never use 90, never use 270. So that's going to be 240, and those are my two answers. When you're finding an angle, you're almost always going to get two answers. The only time you won't get two answers is if it's a unit circle. So let's look at a unit circle one now. I just gave it away. We could get two answers or we could get one. So I'm going to say sine of theta equals 0. Anytime you see a 0, 1, or negative 1, always think unit circle unless it's tangent. Be careful because tangent can be 1 if it's opposite over adjacent. So if you see a 0, 1, or negative 1, think unit circle unless it's tangent. So I'm thinking unit circle. I'm not drawing a triangle. I'm thinking about all my ordered pairs. And I'm thinking to myself, why do I sin? Because of my x's. So you're either thinking, where is y equal to 0? Or if you draw your little triangle, you can think opposite over hypotenuse, so y over r has to equal 0. If you cross multiply, y has to be equal to 0. So I'm looking, where is y equal to 0? Y is equal to 0 here and here. So my two angles are 0 and 180. So unit circle still got two answers. Sometimes I won't. Let's do one more. I'm going to say cosine of theta equals 1. I see 1. I think unit circle unless it's tangent. It's not tangent, so I'm thinking unit circle. So I'm writing in my ordered pairs here for unit circle. Okay, so now I'm thinking either, I know that cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And remember, r is just 1. So if you cross multiply and solve, x equals 1. Or if you just think about cosine is just the x value. I'm looking, where is the x value? 1. There's only one time here. And because we're not going to include 360, look here. This is saying theta is not going to include 360, but it isn't going to include 0. So our answer here, this angle is 0. I get one answer. Answer is 0. That's my answer. Okay. So you're going to have to know the difference. Are you finding the angle or are you finding the ratio? You could see all of these problems like this. Could look like this. Could look like this. Whatever. You have to figure out, am I finding the angle or am I finding the ratio? So if you just look real quickly. Number 1, you're finding the ratio. Number 2, you're finding the angle. Going to have 2 answers. Number 3, you're finding the ratio. Okay? All right, good luck.